All right, Mary Beth Walsh, really appreciate your time. First day of session 2026. As we head into this year, what are your priorities? What are you looking at the most?
So there's two pieces to the job. There's the budget, and then there's policy, and sometimes those two things, get blended together.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of the budget, I think that we need to significantly tighten belts. I think we've got to really take a look at the budget growth that we've experienced in the last few years. I mean, for a while now, but since 2019, when we went to one-party rule, the budget has ballooned. So I think we need to bring in a responsible budget that still covers the essential things that the people in the state need. On policy, I think that we have to hit several things. We have to hit affordability. That seems to be the word everybody's using, but what does that mean to people? It means, can I live affordably in New York State? Can I gas up my car, buy my groceries, pay my bills? That kind of affordability. Can I access decent health care? What about the energy choices that New York is making? Is it going to make my utility bills completely unaffordable? Do we need to have these aggressive climate goals in New York State? So some of the things on a policy level that I'm talking about is, have we gone too far? Do we need to roll some things back? And certainly when it comes to public safety and public policy, I think that we need to rein back in and roll back some of the provisions that were passed in the last few years. So that's just, a few of the things that we need to be mindful of. So from my perspective, it's not just about introducing bills to do something, but sometimes it could be a repealer to take something back.
Yeah, we've seen that in a few different ways. Of course, we talked about energy policy. I guess let's go with the budget to begin with here.
Sure.
Of those things you spoke of. We hear a lot about ways to cut back, and we've heard that from the federal government. We've heard that even by the governor and the budget director reaching out to agencies saying, where can you be more efficient?
Right.
Where do those savings come from,
from
your perspective? And how do you shift costs to things that maybe some people that could be vulnerable populations that are expecting when it comes to help from the government?
Right. It's a great question, and it's complicated. It's not there isn't just a quick thing that I could say that's just, I wish I could wave a magic wand and fix this whole thing, but I can't. Yeah. I think, the federal government in some respects is trying to get their fiscal house in order, right? So they're making cuts at the federal level. Those cuts are impacting us. Just like we upstaters don't like it when we see the mayor of New York City coming up every year with the tin cup, that's what we call it, tin cup, coming up looking for money from the state to finance the city. So too does New York State have to take a hard look at its finances, so that we're not just going with a tin cup to the federal government saying, you can't cut us, we need at least what you've given us before, we need more. So there is shifting that goes on a budgetary, point of view. So it's complicated. I think looking for efficiencies in our agencies is tremendously important, but it's hard. When we legislators get a bill that is increasing the cost of the Medicaid program in little bites, cover this test, cover that treatment, cover this. We want to say yes. We want to be able to offer the people in New York, regardless of economic advantage or disadvantage, at least that same social safety net. But we do have the most expensive Medicaid program in the entire country by a lot. And the Empire Center has done some great reporting on that as recently as just a few months ago that I've been reading. So we've got to take a hard look and say, we want to make sure that we have a safety net for individuals in New York. But when we have almost half of New York City residents on Medicaid, we got to take a look at that too. New York offers an essential plan that only a few other states do. And we have a system where the counties bear the brunt of a lot of the money that's expended on the program at the state level. So there are so many different layers of government involved, so many different things that are involved. So it's complicated, but we have to start somewhere, and we have to really get real about what these things are costing, because other states are bringing in good social safety net programs for a lot less money than New York is.
Do you think though, the federal government's putting New York in a difficult position through some of the threats of federal funding? We just saw the childcare and the welfare threat just yesterday to 5 Democrat states, and New York was one of those. Is that putting the state, and especially the budget, in a difficult spot?
It absolutely is. And I wish that it wouldn't be done as a threatening thing, because I think, just take childcare for example. We have such a really delicate, fragile system of childcare. If you have a child that needs that you need childcare in order to go to work, you don't need to hear about threats going on at the federal level or any level that makes you wonder if that daycare center or that place is going to be open or closed when you go to check it out. So do we need to investigate waste, fraud, and abuse like we're seeing in Minnesota? Absolutely. We need to take a look at that in New York. Should it be done through threats of completely defunding whole programs until that's done? No, I don't think that that's really productive. I wouldn't approach it that way. But I do think that, we do have to we have to make sure that the public's money, whether it's federal money, whether it's state money or local money, is being well spent, because it's, in the end, it's all taxpayers' money in the end.
Yeah, and one of the universal child care has now, the governor mentioned it last year, and now Zohran Mamdani obviously has made that one of his proposals. That's obviously something that I think people hear and listen to, and when it comes to affordability, makes a big difference. But I guess the question would be how to get there, right? Is that also your question?
Absolutely. Yeah. And as I was mentioning to you before we went on interview, in the off session, one of the things that our conference does that I love is we'll do different task forces throughout the state. Last year it was human trafficking. We've done one on child care, and we've come out with a package of bills that the public can go see on and I'll plug the website. It's www.nygoppolicy.com. If your viewers want to go on and take a look at what our package of bills are to try to address some of these issues like childcare, like affordability, like energy choice, any number of issues, that's a good place for them to go and really see what bills we're putting together and what we want to promote to try to address some of these really difficult issues.
One more on the city, because I think that's another topic, because I've spoken with those on all sorts of sides of the aisle on this, and there's some that say it is Zohran Mamdani had a mandate from voters in the city, and it's up to Albany to help make that come to fruition. What do you make of that, especially coming from that side of the aisle?
I think that saying he has a mandate is a joke. It's a joke. Just look at the numbers from the election. That was not a mandate. I think that he did set a record in the primary for most votes. He got the engaged young vote too. Yeah, but you did. I don't remember what the final numbers were, but I would not read that as a mandate. I think he's former colleague of mine. He is a charming guy. He's got a great smile. I think a lot of his policies are just really not mainstream, and would be taking New York State in the wrong direction if we were to take those policies out of the city and start to import them to the rest of the state. That being said, I want New York City to be successful, because New York City, whether we upstaters want to acknowledge it, is the financial center of not only the state, but really the country. And as goes New York City, so goes a lot of the rest of the state. It is an economic driver. So I want New York City to be successful, but I think that, I'm watching with a lot of skepticism about some of the ideas that are going to be coming out. As I always say, the devil's in the details. We've got to figure out, we can all agree on the top line issues that we want to address, whether it's affordability, childcare, energy, all these things. How does he want to approach it? Does he want to approach it through more free stuff, more give outs, more handouts? I would say that while I agree that the issue is what the issue is, I would be approaching it, and my conference would be approaching it differently.
Let's go to criminal justice reform now. Yeah. That's the District Attorney Association has talked about raise the age. We've heard in Albany, we heard the officials over the course of the summer talk about changes they want to see. What changes would you want to see in raise the age legislation?
Well, I think one of the things with Raise the Age is that there were a lot of diversion programs that were supposed to be put in place that were never put into place. And so each year, as we've done the budget since Raise the Age was put into place, we've just reappropriated that money. And it's a lot of money. if we're not going to spend it, then let's reappropriate it and use it for other things that we know we need in this state. Let's just not mess around with that anymore. I think that Raise the Age, the whole concept of saying that there is not adequate brain development in a young person until they hit the age of 26 really ignores the fact that we have a lot of extremely violent 16, 17, 18-year-olds that are being used by gangs to commit worse and worse crime in our communities. I want to make sure that, particularly in the inner cities, that we're taking a look at that population of kids and we're trying to get them down a better path. But if they don't go down that path, and if they have been, brought into a gang or brought into bad criminal activity, I think that there should be accountability.
Do they belong, though, a 16-year-old belong with a 30-year-old, in a prison cell?
Yeah, I don't think that they're being housed like that anyway. But I mean, I agree.
That's what you hear, obviously, from those that are proponents of the legislation.
Yeah. Right. No, I mean, I think that certainly the way that we handle things upstate is we do treat juvenile crime a little bit differently, and we always did. But I know that there were some key cases that came out of New York City that really drove the whole rest of the state to adopt things like Raise the Age and like bail reform. And what I'm saying is that, and have been saying all along, is that we need to consider the dangerousness of the individuals in many ways, regardless of age, hold those individuals accountable, try to get them on a better path if we can through diversionary programming, but there needs to be accountability. Because, I mean, I used to see it in family court. You'd have somebody coming in at 16 years old who's done something really horrendous. And they don't just need counseling and another chance. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they need a lot more than that.
Would a tweak to the law change that, or would a full repeal of the law change that?
I don't know. I will tell you quite honestly that I don't think that there's any appetite for a full repeal of bail reform or Raise the Age from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I carry a bill to repeal bail reform, and I think that we need to at least consider dangerousness, which is what every other state but New York does in making bail assessments. I think that there's been kind of nibbles around the edges to bail reform, and I don't think it's been nearly enough. On Raise the Age, I don't know. I think the way I feel about the programming is that if you're going to do it. But we haven't done it in years, and we certainly are in a budgetary year where we could use that money elsewhere if it's not going to be utilized.
Yeah, I think we've heard from some saying instead of a reimbursement model, get the money up front for those programs, right? Is that something that you would be in support of?
I don't know, maybe. I'd have to see it.
Used, right?
I'd have to see it.
And
as long as they're legitimate programs, I mean, it is a real cautionary tale out of a place like Minnesota that, you see things getting set up that are just absolute shells and shams. We've got to expose those for what they are and make sure that we're not just throwing a lot of money into programs that either don't exist, are not going to be any good, or, we want to make sure that we're putting our money into things that we think really could move the needle and make it better.
Something we spoke about in September that you said you wanted to be a priority was the animal abuse and addressing that in some way in a bipartisan fashion as well, which you had mentioned at the time, which I think there is an appetite for that. I think we just had another case yesterday with a pit bull, I believe, somewhere in your district, I think it was. And obviously we've seen that over the course of the summer. Can you speak again to maybe the progress on that and what that could look like here this session and addressing and holding people accountable for this? Because I think from the conversations I've had, it feels like there's just not enough right now of that.
Right. Well, we just had a set of new regulations come into place for animal shelters. Okay. And the animal abuse legislation that I'm working on, separate from, but very similar to legislation that like Senator Tedisco is working on. We're going to put our minds together. I'm working with some other assembly members like Assembly Member Simpson, Warner, and we're working together to try to create legislation that is going to really make sure that when we bring our beloved pet to doggy daycare, or like I did this morning, I dropped my dog off to a boarding for the day, that that our pet is going to be cared for in the very best way possible, and that there will be strong accountability for places that do not observe basic good standards of care. We believe that most of these boarding facilities care deeply, or they would not be in this business or this line of work. They do the right thing, but there are enough, and as you said, there are unfortunately headlines, it seems every week, with rabbits, dogs, being mistreated. And so we're in the drafting stage still of the bill that I've been working on. We're getting feedback from all of the members and their staffs that are working on it, and we hope to be introducing that bill shortly.
Well, we'll see you on the floor, Senator Walsh. Thanks
Yes,
so much.
thank
your
you.
time. Thanks.
Thank you very much.